Queen's Park Rangers haven't won away from home on Boxing Day since 1967, and at no point did that run look like ending on Thursday afternoon, with 3 first-half Swansea goals in the space of 21 minutes, bringing QPR's unbeaten run of 7 to a startling halt. With just 29% possession across the match and not a single shot on target managed, QPR's habit of lacklustre first-half performances this season was truly punished by the home side this time round, and it comes as a stark reminder that this squad desperately needs additions in key positions this January, as Marty Cifuentes has been very keen to reiterate in recent matches. As usual, I'm Hoopsa, and I'm going to break down what I can from this dumpster fire of a QPR performance. So if you enjoyed this match reaction and you're not already subscribed on YouTube or following on Spotify or Apple, make sure to do so by the end of this episode. If losing Steve Cook against Preston for an uncertain period of time wasn't bad enough, the starting lineup against Swansea came as the bearer of even worse news at 2 PM. His most recent centre-back partner Liam Morrison was also unavailable owing to a muscular injury that will see him ruled out for multiple weeks. That means in the space of one match we've now just lost the 2 centre-backs that have led the charge of our 7-match unbeaten run, a period in which we've boasted our best defensive record of the season, having conceded just 3 goals. Morrison has started 9 games this season between the League Cup and the Championship and is yet to be on the losing side. So with the eventual result that was about to play out in South Wales, I think it's safe to say his importance in this team's fortunes can no longer be understated. Unfortunately, this isn't Morrison's first injury this season, with the 21-year-old Scotsman undergoing surgery back in early September before eventually reappearing at the start of November with a sub-appearance against Leeds United. He's started every game since, and with no options for rotation for either him or Cook, it's seemingly now taken its toll on the pair of them. Cookie's issue last weekend makes him the 11th senior squad player out of 22 to pick up an injury this season, and like Morrison next to him, one of many players to have sustained his without any contact from the opposition. Until this point, I've personally put our injury crisis this season down to bad luck. Some seasons you'll have a load, others not so much, which thankfully happened last season. But when the key difference between the 2 campaigns is that your director of performance is now no longer based at Heston, instead working remotely from Dubai and splitting his time between both QPR and Brooklyn Nets, and there's now an epidemic of non-contact injuries ravaging this squad, you do have to start asking some questions. So with both of the last matches centre-backs now unavailable, that meant 2 changes to the starting lineup against Swansea, with Jake Clark-Salter coming in for his first start since Burnley exactly 2 months ago, and Morgan Fox his first since his Portsmouth disaster class also back in October. And I think when you put it like that, Rangers were pretty doomed from the start. This was Bristol City all over again, except for this time the home side could actually take their chances. In the first half, Rangers barely even touched the ball, shown perfectly here by this graph of the game's momentum. And in fact, Swansea's 730 completed passes over the course of this match was the most by any team in a championship game so far this season, almost triple that of QPR's 248. Let's bear in mind this is a side that sat just 2 points and 2 places above QPR prior to this fixture and had just lost their last 2 games in a row. Obviously, as Russell Martin's successor, Luke Williams' whole mantra is about his team dominating possession, but it's an embarrassing comparison of stats regardless. Swansea put QPR to the sword from the get-go, and with Rangers looking shattered and sheepish and our midfield chasing shadows, it was like watching the home side play around training cones. The Swans' first threatening chance came 10 minutes in with a dangerous ball into the back post from Liam Cullen, almost setting Ronald up for an easy finish, until Powell's last second clearance that was inches wide from being a potential own goal. But just 2 minutes later, top scorer Cullen took matters into his own feet, and if you watch the goal back, it's like a microcosm of all of our issues in this match all playing out at once. QPR played so deep in this match they never had a chance of withstanding the Swansea press. The first goal starts with Paul Nardi under pressure and quickly passing the ball out to his left-footed right centre-back Clark-Salter, who was now himself under pressure and hoops it into midfield. The ball then falls to Swansea initially, but Sam Field mops up and dinks it sideways to Varane, but he's quickly shut down and tries to shuffle the ball softly out to Morgan, barely 10 yards away, and the 18-year-old is also quickly shut down by both Grimes and Om, and within seconds the home side are working the ball into an attacking move once more. The ball then ends up out wide on our left-hand side with Ronald, who stood off in trademark Powell fashion by at least a metre. Saito drops next to him, but neither stick a leg out, leaving the winger free to play a low bouncing ball into the box, and with Fox and Clark-Salter both marking the same man, Cullen drifts into the giant void in our box and flicks the ball in with ease like a drive-by shooting. And aside from QPR's kickoff to resume play, there was no response from the away side, and Cullen's second goal just 16 minutes later, following strong chances for both Ronald and Om, was even easier. And to be honest, it's an excellent case for why QPR cannot continue to set up in low blocks away from home from the very start. Swansea worked their way up the pitch, and with the ball now 50 yards from our goal, every QPR player decided it was a good idea not to press, but to give any player in white 10 yards of space. That meant that all they had to do was wait for a teammate to make a run, which is exactly what Josh Timman did, threading the ball into the box to Key on the right. That ball was enough to take Powell completely out of the equation. No player on the pitch lost more duels, bearing in mind he was put out of his misery at half time, and with Fox not fancying trying to stick a leg out onto the eventual squared ball, Cullen quickly had his second. If this is our left hand side for the foreseeable, we are very much in trouble. And of course, 5 minutes later, with just 33 minutes played, Swansea totally wrapped things up. Grimes got this one going this time, cutting out both Smith and Varane from his own half with a ball that perfectly nestled for Cullen. He pushed the ball out wide to trickster Om, who Varane then decided to team up on with Dunn, but that left Cullen completely free to run into the box and rattle a shot off in an attempt to complete his hat-trick, which Nardi parried out, but it didn't matter because it fell straight to Franco, also completely free behind Field and Powell to volley into the back of the net. By the time of the half-time whistle, Rangers had managed just 17% possession. So what had gone wrong? We've seen this low block away from home many a time this season, deployed at both Burnley and more recently Bristol City, and we came away with points in each of those. For me, I think there is a lot of reasons. It's partly the lack of squad depth, it's partly our Jekyll and Hyde midfield, and it's partly us finally being caught out for one of many poor first half performances this season. Like I said earlier, the defence was doomed from the start, which is odd because we've been playing a Frankenstein defence all season. Both centre-backs are left-footed, both have barely just returned from injury, having missed large portions of the season, and both were all over the place as a result. Powell's minutes have also been inconsistent since his own stint out of the team, and with no news on a new contract ahead of him being able to sign an overseas pre-agreement next month, it would be remiss not to question where his head is at right now. And as I say, the midfield three may as well have not been on the pitch in the first half. A good midfield wins you matches, and this was not a good QPR midfield. Now that's baffling considering I was praising the exact same midfield three against Preston, but it's just not consistent enough. Sam Field for 3 matches in a row has had the least touches of any outfield player to play 90 minutes for either team. Kieran Morgan is excellent in some matches and understandably completely out of depth in others because he's literally an 18-year-old getting his first taste of senior football, and he's probably played more than he should have. He looked absolutely shattered. And Jonathan Varane either has a game of munching up the opposition or one like this where he made no tackles. This may seem like I'm singling out individual players, I'm not, because the whole team performance was very poor, but it all points back to the biggest issue of all, which is this lack of rotation. Even if this squad hadn't been ravaged by injuries this season, we're still short at left back, we're still short up top, and with none of Anderson, Madsen or Dixon Bonner deemed trustworthy, we're now incredibly short in the middle of the park. That means someone like Kieran Morgan has to be relied on game after game, and it's going to do his development more harm because he doesn't have someone to share his minutes or someone that can put their arm around him and show him how to improve. A few have suggested that we might have got more out of this result had Marty rotated more for this one, but with this lack of depth you can totally see why he decided not to. Obviously his hand was forced at half time, so he understandably shook things up with a triple sub, with Chair, Ashby and Madsen replacing Powell, Saito and Morgan. Swansea's business looked like it was going to quickly resume just 2 minutes into the second half when the home team mopped up a loose long ball to Chair, and after toying with their prey for 30 seconds, Key danced his way past Field for a 1v1 with Nardi, but the keeper's parry thankfully wasn't turned in by a spare man this time. But from then onwards, while they continued to dominate the ball, Swansea didn't actually have another shot until the 84th minute, because they quite literally didn't need to. That allowed Rangers to ramp up their 17% possession in the first to a dizzying 41% in the second, and while we looked very marginally better and this time managed 4 shots, the first registered QPR effort didn't arrive until the 80th minute, and none of the 4 were on target. Frey and Anderson would be the 4th and 5th substitutions for Colley and Smith, but neither were able to do much to influence the game. We can write this one off on the back of the excellent run we've been on, if it's a one-off. QPR always do one of these on Boxing Day regardless of the position they're in. This team have worked hard to get themselves out of the pit they dug for themselves over the past month, and thankfully with all of the 7 teams below us bar Oxford losing or drawing, this result hasn't done us as much harm as it could have done. The big worry, of course, is that if Cook and Morrison are both indeed out for prolonged periods of time, this might not be a one-off. And that's exactly what Marty has been warning the club about in his post-match interviews over the last few games. Those comments probably seemed unusual to a few after the wins and draws we'd been amassing, but that was exactly his point. A good run can quickly turn into a bad one with this team, and this squad will desperately need bolstering in January to keep it away from trouble. We needed that this time last year, and even though many of our summer signings have started to show what they can do, we still are going to need more support again. For me right now, with the injuries we've had and we currently have, we're probably going to need a centre back, a left back, a centre mid, and a striker, ideally with at least 2 of them having experience of the Championship. So that's 4 signings at least, just like last January. Get those done and get them in early, and I think we'll be able to make sure that this is a minor blip. But in the meantime, we're going to need a drastic change of setup with the same players available at Norwich on Sunday. Otherwise, I fear they'll be getting the revenge they clearly very much want in some style. Anyway, that's all from me. Do let me know, as usual, what you thought about this performance in the comments below. Is this a one-off, or is this a sign of worse things to come? Thanks very much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you in the next one for my Norwich preview. Cheers!